It's New Year, new tax regime in Nigeria. But there's so much misconceptions, misinformation, apprehension, knocks and kudos trailing the takeoff of the implementation of the Tax Act on the 1st of January. While the federal government and some economists have described the new tax regime as game changers in revenue generation in the country, some citizens remain unconvinced. The new tax framework, which consists of 4 key acts, namely the Nigerian Tax Act 2025, the Nigerian Tax Administration Act 2025, the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Act 2025, and the Joint Revenue Board Modernized and Unified Tax Administration in the country, with provisions like new development levy, improved personal income tax brackets with an 800,000 naira exemption, enhanced digital compliance and incentives like the Economic Development Incentive for businesses. The new tax regime aims to provide greater efficiency and fairness. Now, joining us from our Abuja studio for the breakdown of the Nigerian tax laws is the chairman of the Nigerian Revenue Service, Zach Adedeji. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's begin the conversation. From the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, to the chairman of the Nigerian Revenue Service, NRS, how will you describe the transition?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Nigerian, for your interest in the new tax law. For us, there is no much difference because this is coming from the promise made by Mr. President during his inaugural speech when he said that one of his aim and goal is to remove multiple taxation and to provide a conducive environment for business to grow, because his aim is to tax prosperity, not poverty. His aim is to tax the return, not investment. And in normal parlance is to tax the fruit, not the seed. So it is in fulfillment of Mr. President's goal and vision that we have this landmark tax law. So when you talk about the feeling from movement from Nigeria Federal Land Revenue Service to Nigeria Revenue Service is a feeling of an achievement that one of the promises of Mr. President during our own lifetime is being achieved. So we thank God for the courage that Mr. President has displayed. We thank the National Assembly for their support. And most importantly, we thank the taxpayer for this long-awaited reform that we are here to witness. So the feeling is good, and we are looking forward to start seeing the benefits of this wonderful landmark taxes act that we have.
All right, what specific transition framework has been put in place, to ensure operational continuity as the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, evolves, into the Nigerian Revenue Service, particularly regarding ongoing tax collection audits and enforcement activities?
No, okay. If you look at the whole law, the procedure or the process as put together in the act, you remember that Mr. President signed or assented to the law June last year. And in there, the transition provision have been provided in those acts that we have. Don't forget that Nigeria is a democratic government, and we operate by rule of law. So the law, as it been passed by National Assembly, included all the provisions that is for us to follow. So as an implementation agency that we are, the transition framework is very clear in the law. You will observe that the two of the law started immediately after the assent, but because of national tax policy that stipulates that when you have change in the rates of any tax, or you have major changes that you put in place in tax, you must give minimum of 3 months to the businesses for them to adjust and also for us to prepare. But considering the quantum of the changes and reform, Mr. President and the National Assembly agreed that the Tax Act and Tax Administration will commence as assented to in June by 1st of January 2026. We thank God that we are, and Nigeria are here to witness the commencement of the law. So the operational framework, that is what we've been doing the last 6 months. So, and you can see that the transition is smooth, apart from the rumors that you have. Now you can see the business, whether the size of our Nigeria Stock Exchange or the inflow that you've seen, the stability in exchange rate, you will see this is the positive response to the acts that have been passed. So the transition is smooth, and the engagement continues, and we just plead with Nigeria to assess this tax law as it affects them based on facts and data, not on rumors. You can see now that we are now 13th of January, all those myths that if you don't describe your balance in the account, the money will go, all those things, you can see that Nigeria has seen that those things were nowhere to be found. Actually, that the intent of the reform is to harmonize all the taxes collection, is to modernize the tax collection, and to simplify the tax process. In your introduction, you made mention of development levy. Before now, we have what we call earmark taxes. You have education tax, you have police trust fund, and you have them uncountable and still going on, which is make it very difficult for business to plan, because they don't know which one we are going to introduce again. But with this one item, which we call development tax, which is summation of all these earmark taxes, because I have to clarify that a lot of people still miscommunicate that we have another tax called development tax. No, it is consolidation of all the earmark taxes that we are paying already today into one, to simplify compliance and also to help business plan appropriately. So that's what we've done. And then if you look at it, that will lead to increase in what we commit to education, whether through students' loan or through TED fund, and including all other development activities, including security. There have been new addition to that sharing of development levy. So we're good, and we are up and doing. Okay. We continue to thank Nigeria, National Assembly, and Mr. President for the support for this landmark tax act.
Okay, talking about the
effective.
Okay, talking about the new tax regime, how significant are the provisions in the laws?
When you say new tax regime, is like how we said, just to put it on record, this is the first significant tax or fiscal reform since inception of Nigeria independence. Just to put it in perspective, until now, the Tax Stamp Duty Act was Stamp Duty of 1939. And no democratic government have done anything, these phenomena in the tax reform that we've done. So these come as a result of a lot of consultation based on the experience and what we think we need to do to remove hurdles from business development, from prosperity, growth in our country. So the way they call it regime or something, make it as if it's something difficult or something we come to impose. It's actually the process or the reform that we put together to actually simplify the tax administration in Nigeria. They are significant in such a way that it simplifies the tax collection process. It harmonizes all the tax laws scattered in more than 62 books into just one book. Also empower Nigeria Revenue Service beyond tax collection to revenue intelligence, and also give us platform to actually use technology and digital to actually drive revenue collection for the prosperity of Nigeria. So the Nigeria Revenue Service, as it is now, is not only rebranding, it is total system upgrade. It's total institutional upgrade to support the Renew Hope agenda of country and to support sustainable development.
Mr. Chairman, I have two questions rolled into one. The man Zacchaeus in the Bible was a tax collector. And here you are.
Yes, sir.
You are Nigeria's #1 tax collector, otherwise known as Agbowode. Did you always, would you say you've always wanted to be a tax collector so that it can align with your name? What you do can align with your name. That's the first question. Then tell us what this new tax reform means to the ordinary Nigerian. How do the ordinary Nigerian benefit from this new tax reform?
Thank you, my brother. The first question, honestly, it is God Almighty that put that together. You will know that I'm too young when I was born to name myself. Also, I'm here by the grace of God and the magnanimity of Mr. President. So those, I don't have any answer for that first question. That being called Zacchaeus and now tax collector in Nigeria, that is between God and Mr. President. For the second question that you asked, that what is this for normal citizen? Number one is that we have simplified the tax collection process through these acts. Number two is that we've harmonized all taxes into one book, which lead to simplification of compliance. And if you look at the exemption list, 90% of disposable income of poor people are on food and transport. If you look at the tax act, all these are exempted from transactional taxes, food and transportation. So for common man, it is relief. Also, for low salary earner, you will see the table that has been put out, and I can send you one after, that the lower cadre have reduction in their tax. And by the time the salary is being paid by this end of January, the salary earner in that lower cadre will confirm compared to what they've paid under the old law, compared to this one. And majorly is that because we've removed a lot of hurdle for business, there is creation of prosperity for Nigeria. Because when companies do well and prosper, they employ more people, and then the prosperity trickle down to all Nigeria. The aim of Mr. President, as I said, is to remove all the hurdles so that we can grow the pie. The prosperity in Nigeria can grow. We can develop the business. We can have competitive economic environment that will lead to the prosperity of all. And that is the intent. So I plead with Nigeria to just support the government, support us, and very soon people will see the benefits of this wonderful reform as the part of what Mr. President has been doing since his inauguration.
Again, I have two questions rolled into one. You're asking Nigerians for support so that this whole thing can be an unqualified success. But some are even demanding that you suspend the implementation of the new tax laws for 6 months. Then there was also the scathing criticism by KPMG. How would you respond to all of this?
Okay, thank you very much. I've said it earlier that the suspension of law has no place in democratic setting. When law is passed, it becomes law. So there are instruments that anybody can get into. So anybody that asks for suspension of the law possibly understand it in half, or I can categorize some other. I don't want to call anybody any names. Let me explain. The law has been passed. Mr. President assented to the law, and it has become law. So the only under one condition is when you have state of emergency, which through the grace of God, we are in the state of peace. We are not in state of emergency. So calling for suspension of law has no place in democratic setting. So that is first. Now to expand it further, the meaning, in case people will not understand what it means, remember that the old laws we used to collect taxes has been repealed, meaning that we don't have any law other than this law that we have. The only instrument I have as a revenue collecting agency is law, and that is what we use to collect money. So when you suspend law, what it means is that you don't have any basis for collection. So if I collect your money, I become armed robber. And the way you can extend that is that, can we survive the next 6 months, as they are requested, for not collecting taxes in Nigeria? So tell me how you will survive. Any sustainable economy relies on such collection, because that is the only way that you run a sustainable economy. So when people say that, is either they don't understand, is either they write such thing for them, there is no place in the law that allow us, as whether president or anybody, to suspend the law as passed by National Assembly, except possibly court judgments or any other legal instrument, which by God's grace, God will not allow us to have as a country.
No, the second leg to the question, the criticism from KPMG.
Okay, like I said, that one, if you follow the news, you will see that I have them in my office yesterday, where we'll have the conversation. And I want people, it's not that we are opposed to criticism. And why? Because I just explained, in the history of Nigeria, we've not had this type of landmark tax act. So it is expected that people, either they don't understand all, they don't have the context, or they misinterpret what they read, because it is new, and this is allowed. Like I explained to them also, and how in their own magnanimous state, they also see that it is true. They criticize it based on the level of understanding they have, but now they are better informed, and you can also confirm from their statements and what you've seen that they understood now, we are on the same page, and then we welcome all criticism or observation that will lead to the perfect implementation of the law. So there is no problem with their criticism, and we are ready. We expect this, and we know that this kind of thing will happen. And then even being here is part of the engagement and the fulfillment to let people understand. So we understand is new, and that is why you can see that kind of comment from them. But now they realize, and they know that we're on the same page, and they also confirm that this is what we need as a nation for now. If sustained growth, sustained prosperity is our goal.
Now, tell me, how will the new governance structure of the NRS strengthen institutional independence, reduce political interference, and generally improve accountability in revenue administration compared to the former FRS model?
Thank you for that question. In your introduction, you remember that you listed the law that had been passed. One of it is Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Act. All those governance structure has been put in there by National Assembly. There are oversight functions that they have responsibility to carry out. we have ministry, we have president. So the governance structure is done in such a way that it eliminates manual intervention in administration and reduce unnecessary bureaucratic delay and promote the use of technology in order to operate or to do revenue collection. So as I have said earlier or in some other fora, that Nigeria Revenue Service is not political revenue service. So the political interference has no place in Nigeria Revenue Service. Why? Because we have law and we follow law. And don't forget, the relationship between Nigeria Revenue Service and taxpayer is that of the vineyard and the gardener. It is in our interest that taxpayer actually do well, because it is in their prosperity that we also prosper. Don't forget, the focus of Mr. President is to tax the prosperity, not poverty. Is to tax the return, not investment. To focus on the fruit and not the seed. So for us to do that, it has to be symbiotic relationship between us as service provider and taxpayer. So the governance structure actually helps and give more to taxpayer in self-service and then in eliminating manual intervention, reduce the level of audit, because we've now provided one-stop shop for taxpayer. So you don't need to move from one agency to other, and which is the aim of the reform, harmonization of collection without taking any other legitimate role. Our role is just to collect. And then when you know that you have to just go to one place, so there will not be any need for any political interference, which we've never had, even under Federal Land Revenue Service. And now the law is more strengthened to make sure that the governance is accountable and then we're responsible to National Assembly as prescribed by the law.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zacchaeus. There is so much apprehension about what will happen from January 1, 2026 under the new tax regime. For example, for a tax clearance certificate that is valid till December 31, 2026, the accounting year is naturally 2023, 2024, and 2025. So in which accounting year will the Nigerian Revenue Service kick off now?
Thank you very much. And I repeat, there is no need for apprehension. Nigeria should know that there is no need for apprehension. The aim of Mr. President, which has been supported by National Assembly by passing the law, is actually to relieve Nigeria of multiplicity of taxes, high cost of compliance cost. That is the aim of Mr. President. So there is no need at all for the apprehension. And thank God January 1st has come and it has passed. I've not received any complaint from anywhere, whether the account has been bad or moved, or whether there is any problem. Now, in tax law, there is transition provision. When you have tax clearance that is in existence, it's as valid as the way it is written. Don't forget, I was Chairman Federal Land Revenue. I'm still the Chairman Nigeria Revenue Service. So from that, you can see that nothing will change, most especially for what we've done under the law when we were Federal Inland Revenue Service. We're not going to change anything. And when you talk about effective date of accounting year, the explanation is simple. In form of taxes, you have what we call transactional taxes and you have income taxes. For payee, you know it is with immediate effect. For transaction, VAT and all other, it is also with immediate effect. And every other provision will follow the existing law as we have it. So Nigeria don't have anything whatsoever to be worried about the validity of tax clearance. As long as you have tax clearance, we say it's going to take 3 years, it should be valid for those years. So, and don't forget, we have help desk, we are open, and we are service provider to all taxpayers. So if there is anything that is not clear, that is why we have help desk in all our offices, not only to respond to matter relating to new tax law, but also to any other matter as to tax payments. So it is our responsibility as a service to provide that succor to all the taxpayers. So Nigeria has nothing whatsoever to worry about new tax law. And thank God that you are also a taxpayer, and then you run bank accounts, and you can testify that you've never seen any charges or movements in your account or read anything that has happened. So Nigeria has nothing to fear. This law has come to actually simplify. And I've said it, the law is for us to tax right, not to tax more. We are not going to collect more from people. We just want to collect rightly and fairly.
Yeah, thank you, Executive Chairman, sir. It's good the way you are explaining this. You are really simplifying it, because these are the questions people ask us, and that is why we are using this opportunity to ask you, and we love the breakdown. So the next thing I still want to ask is to find out, will Nigerians now need to fill a tax form every month or once a year? Or is everybody, both high and low income earners, are they required to fill this tax form?
Okay, let me explain, and I will talk in general terms. When they say tax filing is different from tax payment, if you've been to any advanced country, tax filing is just to give us your data that I am taxable person, this is my total income, this is how much I've paid as taxes, and this and for all this, just for data gathering. And majority of this individual tax filing actually happen at the state level, because remember that Nigeria is a federation, as a federation setting. The personal income tax is purely responsibility of states. It is individual state internal revenue service that administer the collection of pay as you earn from the state. Federal Nigeria Revenue Service concentrates on collection from majorly the corporate income taxes, which is done annually, because company income tax, except for specialized petroleum industry, paid once in a year, except you request for instrumental payment, which is separate arrangement. And for individual that do payee is deducted before the salary is being paid, which is done monthly. So filing, nothing has changed. And as I've said, filing is different from payment. Filing is just keeping your record. Whether you have something to pay or not, you have to file if you are a taxable person, whether company or an individual. So this one has not added any burden to taxpayer in form of tax filing, other than to simplify it. And most of this filing to nowadays is through the system. You don't need to fill physical payments, and that is part of what we are doing. Remember I said the new thing Nigeria Revenue Service is bringing on board is the use of technology and data intelligence to gather data and also to analyze them.
Airline operators are complaining that high ticket prices, both locally and internationally, are reflective of the huge and multiple taxation they are subjected to. How do you respond to this, and how will the new harmonized tax regime address these issues? Because during the Christmas period, a lot of people couldn't travel out of Lagos and Abuja. Tickets were as high as 750,000 from Lagos, for example, to Asaba, especially those traveling to the east. So, I mean, and they are blaming the different taxes for these high airline prices.
Thank you very much. As much as I will not join issue with any private commercial operations, And if you followed, you will see that NCCA issued statements relating to that the high cost of ticket has nothing to do with tax. That's one. Two, you just made mention that in December, and you also alluded that the new tax law takes effect in January. And you know that the tax law is not retroactive. So if the new tax law is just effective as of January 1st, how would that be how would that responsible for the high in cost in December? Just to tell you that was not the truth related to air ticket. And another thing I want to clarify is that air, most especially local or international, has to do with international protocol. And people need to understand that when you go into certain type of businesses, there are rules and regulations in those businesses. The only complaint I've heard from them is withholding tax relating to their aircraft leases and everything. And I've explained earlier in other fora, withholding tax is not type of taxes. Withholding tax is a prepaid tax. Withholding tax happen when there are certain transactions that, except the person get involved in that transaction, withhold that money, there is no way you will get to know about that transaction. So when the tax is being withheld, it's not whether it's VAT or any other thing. It's a prepaid tax of the taxpayer. But why you see people complaining most time about withholding tax is because they are not tax compliant, because they are not doing the filing. Because if you have any receipt of any withholding tax, when you do your final tax filing, any tax that you paid in the past in form of withholding tax has to be reduced from your current liability, and it is the net that you pay to the government. But because a lot of people have not used to complying, so they see withholding tax as form of taxes. So when you see major complaining coming from the airline, is because of the nature of their operation, because they have the aircraft on lease. And by rule, when you have this on lease, you have to withhold tax from the lease fee before the net is being paid. And that is not us. This is global practice. It's not only restricted to Nigeria. And that is why the ticket cost has nothing to do with either old tax law or the current tax law.
Okay, what measures are being implemented to manage staff redeployment, capacity building, and performance incentives within the NRS to prevent operational disruptions and also retain critical technical expertise during the transition period?
Okay, thank you very much. You will know that this is what we've done. I've said it earlier. I'm lucky to have the best of staff in Nigeria Revenue Service, competent, hardworking, and patriotic. So for them, they look forward to this implementation. We've been preparing for the last 6 months in form of technology, in form of training, and within the capacity. And that is what you've observed, that now that we've moved and then the law commenced in January, you've not heard of any destruction. We are ready, we are fully prepared, and apart from normal challenges that do come with this kind of reform, which within us we have capacity to address and to resolve. So there will not be any destruction, and the good news for the taxpayer is that the experience will be smooth and continue to be smoother.
Okay, some food vendors, supermarkets, restaurants, and small business owners, they have started charging VAT. Now, how will the NRS ensure that they are remitting same to government and not just pocketing it?
No, it's not possible to pocket it. And this is part of our own operation model. I will not let anybody know the way what we put in place to make sure that nobody evades tax. But I can tell you that it is more and more expensive today to evade than to comply. So the best thing for people is to comply. don't forget, most especially in Nigeria today, most of the transactions that go through e-channels is far, far more than the normal. And also, I want to give it to whether the restaurant and everywhere they are charging, that they are also patriotic Nigeria. I don't want to believe anybody will collect Nigeria taxes and put it for himself. So I don't want us to see them that way. They are patriotic citizens. They see tax as a civil responsibility that they have to do. So Nigeria don't have anything to worry about those people that we evade. It is difficult, extremely expensive, most especially taking into consideration the fines in the new tax act to evade or to collect and not to remit. I trust them and I believe them, and they are citizens like every other person, and they are also patriotic. So no, Nigeria don't have anything to worry about concerning the remittance.
Okay. Now, how will the NRS integrate existing tax administration platforms like the Tax Pro Max, taxpayer databases, and third-party data sources to enhance compliance and also minimize leakages?
Thank you very much. That one I do our main operational activities. And like I said, I'm blessed with colleagues and staffs that are competent, patriotic, and they have capacity to get all these things done. And that is what we've done in the last 6 months. The integration is ongoing. You know, we'll continue to have it. We have the supporting technology. We have the organizational structure that supports our delivery concerning new tax acts. So we don't have anything to worry about that. We have that as our internal arrangement. And then all the taxpayer who can confirm that as a result of commencement of new acts, no problem or no destruction has happened. So integrating all those things is our duty, and that is what we're doing.
Chairman, I want you to reiterate this point. I know that you've answered this question elsewhere. It is the most frequently asked question since this tax reform process kicked in. And the question is, how will the new tax regime affect private bank account owners? For example, if I have some money in my savings or current account, is it taxable? If I were to give Majid Jamil the sum of 100,000 naira, because today is his birthday, I were to give that as a birthday gift, am I going to pay tax on it?
Thank you very much. And I want to answer this question once and for all. Whether old tax law or new tax law has nothing to do with your personal bank account. Whether you're a company or you're an individual. Don't forget that tax is percentage of your profits. So if you have an asset is not to be taxed. So your cash is your asset in your bank account. Nobody tax the assets. We only tax the profits. We only tax the return. Nobody tax your investment. So when you have money in your personal account, it's your either asset, you have it, your fixed deposit, it's your investment. The only thing is the return on those investments or the asset. So if you transfer money from your account to my brother that is doing the birthday, that is a personal transaction between both of you. It has nothing to do with tax authority, whether at state level or we at the federal level. So it is part of the miscommunication that is going on about that. So having money or description in your bank account, it has nothing to do with what we're doing. We are only focusing on the profits, and then individual or intra-transfer is not a transaction that is under the tax authority preview. And I've said it, that no law allows anybody to go into your bank account and tax you because you transfer money or you keep money or you do anything, except you get involved in any transaction that is taxable. Okay. So people should be rest assured that nobody, whether you describe it or you put a description or you don't put any description, tax law, both the old law or even the new law that we have now, has not given anybody any right to come into your personal account and tax you and instruct bank to debit you or not. No, there is no such provision in any tax act.
Okay, for companies who do not adhere to the rules about withholding tax, especially for those who render services, what will happen under this new tax regime?
That is severe penalty for that. So the penalty is there. And like I said, I want us to see whether company, like I said, company or individual as patriotic as a Nigerian. So I don't want to believe that you will have company that will know the law and will not follow the law. And if you have such, that is why we have compliance departments. That is why you have this deterrent in form of interest, charge or penalty. So the law is very clear as to what happened to someone that refused to obey the law. So the law is self-correcting because as you provided for the provision, violation of such provision has penalty according to the law.
No, the major fear of the ordinary Nigerian is that the poor are about to start paying higher taxes. What is the fate of the poor Nigerians regarding this tax regime?
Okay, like I've said, that tax is on the profit. Tax is on the return. Tax is from the fruit. So if you have businesses that you make profit, you are not a poor person. So I've explained that what poor people spend 90% of their money on, 90% of disposable income of the poor people is on food and transportation. And these items are exempted from taxes. So from where are we going to collect money from the poor? And I put this publicly to everybody, that if anybody look at any sections of this law, that anybody that can find one section that tax the poor person should just come out. Any section of the law that relates to poor, apart from relieving them, like I've told you, 90% of what poor people spend money on is exempted from tax. 90% of what they spend money on is exempted from taxes. So, which type of tax will poor people be paying? If anything, this reform, this tax act, giving more benefit to the poor, to the vulnerable of our society, than any other tax law or fiscal document that has ever been produced in Nigeria. And I've said that publicly, that if there is any section anywhere that people have seen that this one focuses on poor, that they should bring it out. I've said that more than a month now. I've not seen any, because there is no section of this tax act that tax poor or takes more from the poor, other than the one that relieve the poor, telling you now that all food item is VAT exempted. Those people that earn lower salary are reduced rate for their taxes. And transportation, public transportation, anything that has to do with it, is also exempted from VAT. So tell me the activities of the poor that we are going to tax. And if you now look at the real impact, is that because by this tax act, business can do well, then we can take more people out of poverty line into prosperity line, which is the vision of Mr. President, which is what he has been doing from beginning, even until now, and by God's grace, we will continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for Nigerians who say, why pay tax when I can't enjoy the basic amenities, why should the ordinary Nigerians trust the government?
most time I ask this question that for Nigeria Revenue Service, our responsibility is to assess, to collect, and to account. That is what it is. Nigeria voted for National Assembly, voted for us in the executive to put plan together. And this fund that we collect is what we use to run the budget, to pay for the security of life, Not only that, we have student loan that is being done. We have infrastructure. So Nigeria should continue to trust the government that they will have value for their money. They should do their civic responsibility. So when you see, I don't have basic amenity, I pray that the country is not under war. That is when people begin to appreciate what it costs to maintain peace. So, and if you look at what we've been doing, is to make sure that we take more people out of poverty line and into prosperity. So Nigeria should continue to trust the government that they will see the value for what they pay for. Let's do our own civic responsibility, and Nigeria will see the benefits.
Okay, for crypto earners, under the new law, will you pay tax on your gains and losses? Tell us.
I didn't understand that question. You said for who?
For crypto earners,
Yes.
will you pay tax under the new tax regime? Will you pay tax on your gains and losses?
No, on losses you don't pay tax.
You don't pay tax.
Because tax is only on profit. No, when you incur loss, you cannot pay tax, which is part of the reform, is one of the benefits. You know, in the old law, there is something they call minimum tax, meaning that even when you make loss as a business, you have to pay tax on your turnover. Mr. President sees this as taxing the capital. And he said, this is not my goal or vision. Because if you continue to do this, the business will die. They remove that the tax can only be paid on profit. So if you are a crypto business, you make gain, definitely you will pay tax. But if you incur loss, nobody collects tax from loss, because we've removed the provision that tax business even when they make loss, which is part of the benefit coming in with this tax act.
Okay, Biko, do you still have one more question for?
Well, I want to just congratulate you on the takeoff of this new tax regime, and we wish you Godspeed.
Thank you.
As you continue to deliver service to the generality of our people.
Absolutely. All right, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Zacchaeus Aditiji. Dr. Zacchaeus Aditiji is the chairman, Nigerian Revenue Service. Thank you so much for joining us on Journalist Hangout.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, too.
All right, gentlemen.